Hi everyone, welcome to TechTalks and second link of tech session with Brian McRoberts. Brian is from Scotland, UK, and he has over 20 years of experience in testing industry. He has experience in Agile, V-model, rapid application testing, and not only front end, he has experience in backend SQL database integrations as well. He's a fully experienced exploratory tester, and in today's session, Brian will be sharing about Agile best practices and exploratory testing, how to do exploratory testing as well. Welcome, Brian, to the Rain Coffee Talk session. Over to you.
To you, and thank you for inviting me to this coffee morning chat. I really enjoy them. We do a lot of them with the Ministry of Test. We used to do a lot of them, and after we have people who speak, we have these kind of informal get-togethers where we just bounce off ideas and discuss our own experiences. And I get a lot out of those um, chats because people can say, "Oh, I'm doing this today, and I've done this yesterday," and you say, "Oh, I should be doing that." So these chats are really good.
Thanks, Brian, for joining us with the session, Rain Coffee Talk session today. And could you please share about your background, experience, and how your journey started in the testing industry?
Oh, like a lot of people who get involved in testing, my testing journey started when I was unemployed for a while. I just left university, or one of the two, and I'd done a multimedia degree um, back in 97,
Oh, that's
1997.
long back.
And multimedia, a master's degree in multimedia technology. And I had no job, and so I went along. So I went along to an agency, and they sent me to a company called WM Company, who I think at the time were Deutsche Bank, I think. And I was sent into a test team. I had no experience of software at all, software development, other than a little bit of multimedia programming, but it was very, very basic. And so I was sent in there as a test execution. That's my job. My job title was test executor, if you
Oh,
believe that. And all I was given basically Word documents with steps in them, saying click this, and this was, they were building out reports. It's a benchmark reporting piece of software that they were using to benchmark reports to whatever they were benchmarking against. And so it was a very basic system, but all I was doing was following these steps, nothing more. I was no analysis or anything. They put me down in front of the computer, and basically I was click, 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 click. Yes, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Pass. Click, 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 click. The thing would crash, which it did a lot. And I would say, oh, it's crashed. And they would come over, look over the screen and go, right, can you take a screenshot of that, Mr. McRoberts? And then I'd take a screenshot and write a bug report. I clicked this button, I clicked that button, and it fell over. And that was then given to the developer to go and fix. It was very laborious process in those days, I can tell you. Yeah, and then from there I joined. I left because it was just a contract, and I left and joined full time a company at the time called Bara, who were doing estimates software, and that's where I cut my teeth really, software testing. And I was there for about 8-9 years, I think. I remember.
okay.
And then I joined. The company finished, and I went off and joined a software test consultancy company, who are one of the people here, Stuart, worked for as well. And I spent 10 years working for them, mostly in finance. Companies like RBS and Clydesdale Bank. And I did some work with the local government, kind of regional government, Career Scotland. And I left them to join another company called Craneware, who are a healthcare provider. And that's where I cut my teeth for the first time ever in Agile world for 3 and a bit years. I left them to join another company very briefly, and then I moved to the company I am now called Stella Romada, doing a mixture of integration testing and system testing for a big financial company. That's my company, Stellar Armada, provide software testing services. So I'm back in the consultancy world, whatever you want to call it.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing your background experience and your journey into testing industry. And coming to our real coffee talks session, we are following the coffee talks pattern, which is we have a coffee one, coffee two, coffee three, and coffee four random questions. So if time permits, we can go through all the questions. So let's go through with the first question. So the first question here is how test cases, test sets, and test plan will be organized in Agile. Could you please share your thoughts about the test cases and how it will be organized in Agile practices?
Well, are you doing test cases, or do you want to move away from test cases? Do you want to do test charters? And but I mean, it depends what. Agile is great because it's a guide. You don't have to. You do what is good for you and what makes sense to you and what makes sense to your testers and your team. I always like to have if I am doing test cases, I like to have a repo, and I like that test repo to be as dynamic as possible. So that's like every test that's ever been written that you've done in the company or your team is stored there, and then depends what test management tool you're using as well. Some people use ADO, TFS, Quality Center, whatever, Jira, whatever you're using. And then from there you can just do little. You can have your regression pack. You can have, and you should be trying to build out your test cases depending on what your system is by organizing it into functional groups or front end, back end, whatever you're doing. But it does take a lot of work to set it up. I'm not denying it, but once it's set up and you've got it, your tester should be able to do a search in whatever you're using and say, I want to find 10 test cases on front end, page 1, page 2, page 3, and you should be able to find them and reuse them again into your test plan.
Right.
So get a good test repo if you're doing test cases. That's what I'm saying. That's what I would do. It does take a bit of organizing, and I've seen that in many companies. They can get out of control. And you end up with hundreds of test cases that are all duplicates of each other.
Exactly.
People are and that is a waste of time, and if you try and keep it tight and make sure your test analysts and your test people don't write duplicate scripts, because that's duplication of efforts. It's something that Agile is attempting to get rid of, really.
But there should be, as for the following up question, there should be some standard documentation, right, for tracking purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If we go for exploratory testing, how can we make sure the test coverage is fully achieved? 100% test coverage is achieved.
You have to get 100% coverage. I mean, exploratory testing for me is, I use, when I was doing it, I started doing it, formalizing my because you've got, exploratory testing can be very informal, can't it? And it's not something that people think, oh, it's just clicking buttons and moving through the system or doing whatever it is you're doing, but it's not. You have to be, you can be more formal, and I've started to try and think about that more often as well now. I mean, I'm a big fan of, if you have ever heard of a guy called Michael Bolton, he's not the singer Michael Bolton. Look him up. He's quite active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, right, Michael Bolton.
I've read a bit about what he writes about exploratory testing, and he's a very vocal in his support in his theory, which is using like test charters. And that to me is the way that we should be going for that's bit of testing, because also you've got automation on this automation as well, which sits alongside exploratory testing. And automation's absolutely fundamental to testing, in my opinion. It frees up your testers to do the really important stuff, which is interrogating, and I mean interrogating the new bit of functionality, the new code that's been written, and to figure out the problems with it, the challenges with it. And so getting your testers to write test charters and to think about the software that they're testing is difficult. It's a bit of a mind shift for some people, because a lot of testers are scripted testers. You know, they will follow a script religiously, you know, but are they thinking about software that they are testing? And a charter, I think, organizes your ideas. You know, it's like, oh, I've got to do a front end, say a web application, right? Your company does a web app, isn't it, for retail? Isn't it retail or cars or something like that? So
yes.
So, you know, you have to think about usability, for instance, for a user. How easy is it for me to get around your website? You know, and stuff like that. And testers should not just be doing physically testing something, but they should also be talking to the people who write user stories. In Agile, we've got features, epics, features, Agile. You know, that's the sort of. And your tester and your dev, whoever's developing it, should also be talking to the business. There's always this thing in Agile that it's all about engineers and software testing, but it's also about the business. And the business sometimes get forgotten about in software development. So I've gone off on a tangent again.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing your thoughts. And coming to the second question, what is shift left testing and what is shift right testing? Which one is the best approach? Could you please share about your thoughts and experience on this?
To me, it's just common sense that you want your testers to be involved earlier as possible in your software, in the development of whatever you're building out and whatever product you're building. And getting your tester, your developer, your business analyst, or your stakeholder, or the person that's coming up with the idea of whatever you want to do, and getting them together. A few years ago, we'd be sitting in the same room, and you whiteboard the idea up on a wall. You'd be going, right, I want to build out a website that sells apples, you know, whatever, and you already get the tester in there, you get the developer in there, and you're building it out. Even before you start writing a line of code, you get your developer and your tester and your product analyst thinking about how they're going to build it, how they're going to test it, even before a line of code is written. You know, and that to me is just the way all software should be built. And you get some people though who will say, for instance, Agile and shift left, shift right, whatever you want to call it. I've even heard the phrase shift out. Would you believe? Shift out. That's another one I've heard recently. Is that it only works for modern new products. You know what I mean? Like building a completely new product from scratch. Agile only works for that, and only Agile can work for small companies, not big monolith companies like. But I would disagree with that, because even a legacy product, like I'm working on a legacy product myself, is every time a developer writes something for, you know, he's doing a business as usual update to a bit of product, he's writing new software usually. So Agile should equally work for that. So I don't know about what's the best way for shift left or shift right. Honestly, try it. see what works. That's the thing about Agile, is you have to try it first.
Right.
And more often than not, you will fail. A lot of people, when they start Agile or they're doing Agile, will fail it. We'll get it wrong. And that's the thing, you learn from the mistakes. You know, you learn, oh, that doesn't suit us because of X, Y, Z. We'll do this way instead. It's a learning process. You're not going to get it right first time, and so many companies don't. I heard a story about a few weeks back there. They were talking about Agile, and they tried it in a company that I know, and it failed and they didn't want to go, and they went back to waterfall. So,
I agree with you.
But it failed because probably people were doing it wrong.
Right.
Or people weren't prepared to tough it out. There was no buy-in. Everyone has to buy in from business to software. And quite often you get the software people doing Agile, but the business are doing waterfall. You know what I mean?
Yes, right.
So that happens a lot. It's a cultural thing that you have to change within the entirety of your company. It doesn't happen there.
That's right. I agree with you. And coming to the third question, exploratory testing is for everyone or only for experienced testers? Could you please share about your thoughts on the third question?
I can see what the person was thinking when they wrote this. I can see the way their mind was thinking. But I am of the opinion everyone should do it. Everyone. And I don't just mean software testers. I mean everyone in your delivery team or whatever you've got your delivering software should be doing it. Should be have a session doing it. And I would even include the business analysts and the product analysts. I've met some product analysts in my time who are fantastic testers, and you know, so it shouldn't just be senior tester that does it. It should be everybody, even the developer. And I would and trying to get some developers to do testing isn't easy. But I've been fortunate as well. I've met a lot of developers who were a bit skeptical of it, but actually won round in the end and enjoyed it and enjoyed interrogating the software and going, wow, I didn't know, whoa, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and they get right into it. Sometimes you've got to tell them to stop because they get carried away. But no, I think everyone should do it. There shouldn't be any, oh, you can't do it because you're not experienced enough. That's nonsense. That's not a mindset that I would like to have. Encourage everyone to do it because they can bring so much more. I've seen people testing things and I'm going, why didn't I think of that? Why did I not do that? Because everyone's got their own mental processing. The more you can bring to bear on your software, the better. Use everyone. Use all resources. That's what I would do. There might be occasions where you have to do some very quick testing, and that might involve getting someone who is a bit more experienced. So there are times that might come into it. So I'll give you that.
Thanks, Brian, for the information.
Welcome. This is good.
Thanks for sharing it. With the third question, we have completed our round one, and coming to the coffee two session, round two session, where we have like multiple questions. How to make sure test documentation, test automation, and features delivered in time in Agile. As Agile, we have sprints for 2 weeks and 3 weeks. How we can make sure the features and test scripts and automation will be delivered in sprints? Could you please share about it?
Time. Delivered in time. Well, that's a very interesting question. So Agile is all about. I mean, you get some companies that do 2-week sprints, and you get some companies that do 3-week sprints. And to me, I had my own experience was in my team. We sometimes used to take on too much work. And at the end of your sprint, technically, you should be finished everything. And you shouldn't have anything hanging over in the next sprint. But invariably, what happens in a lot of teams, it wasn't just our team, it was other teams I saw around me, they would have things rolling over and rolling over and rolling over. And you shouldn't do that. I mean, planning is extremely important. And have been brave enough to say, nah, I don't think we'll be able to do all this in 2 weeks. It's something that team has to tell their people higher up, saying, like, no, because the business will always want more, and you have to just say no sometimes. So, and also be prepared to break your work down into the smallest bit possible. Is something that I've always enshrined as well. You know, sometimes that's the only way to do it, is to actually just say, right, we're only going to deliver a tiny bit of software each sprint. Does everyone agree?
Okay, Brian, I agree with you. It's 100% agreeing. And coming to our fifth question, what is your opinion on codeless automation? Nowadays, many tools coming up in codeless and zero scripting. Could you please share about our experience on codeless automation?
I've never used it. I'm starting my knowledge of automation is tiny. I'm starting out on my own journey. I'm learning Python at the moment, which is proving to be extremely difficult for me. So my knowledge of automation is very, 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 very limited, I'm afraid. But I know that I love it, because it should allow, as I said before, me as a manual exploratory tester to not worry about what's going on behind me and just get on with what's in front of me. So and the more automation you can have, the better. So codeless automation, I think, would probably allow you to build up quite a bit of automation quickly. But I don't know how strong it is, codeless automation. I did a little bit a long time ago, you know, click and record, where you just click and the whole thing records your journey through a web application. So you play it back and it'll just go through your journey on the website. That's it, exactly what you've done. And that can sometimes be out of date very quickly. So I don't know if that's still the case these days for the codeless, but I think the codeless ones would go out of date quicker than a more coded version, which would allow a quicker update, I think. But as I say, my experience of automation is next to nothing. I always get somebody else to do the automation, someone with coding experience.
I agree with you. Thanks, Brian, for sharing your insights. With fifth question completed, we have the sixth question on difference between exploratory testing and acceptance testing in Agile. Could you please share what is the difference between exploratory testing and Agile testing, acceptance testing in Agile?
See, I always think the business acceptance testing is slightly more, is that you are concentrating on what I would call your golden journeys through the application. You know, and you know, if you get a new bit of functionality, when time it gets to business acceptance testing, me as I'm basically just going to be doing what the user does, you know, clicking, you know, whatever it is, and I'm not thinking too much about anything else. I just want to go and buy a car. I just want to go and buy something off Amazon. I just want to open my bank account. I'm not thinking too much about anything else within that web. You know, most people, when they go to websites or use software applications, they will do a particular journey through the application. And so acceptance testing good acceptance testing is people who have just built out what's called the golden journeys, the golden paths of the software. Exploratory testing, by its nature, is a lot more is richer and will be thinking about what happens. What happens if I put in? What happens if I have a 4-digit entry when it's a 5-digit? Or you're trying to cause the system not to work. Well, acceptance testing is just, I want it to work. So as an exploratory tester, you're deliberately trying to force the system to do things and see how gracefully it all handles those. So there is a difference there.
Right, Brian. Well said. Like expert testing, following up question, there will be no structured procedure for exploratory testing, or there will be any structured position, strategy for the exploratory testing?
Well, as I said before, you have to encourage your testers to write to think about the feature they're testing, or the user story, or whatever they're in front of them, is to start writing charters, start writing almost your own story of what you're doing, and start thinking like, what happens if you might be doing a non-functional testing. You might be thinking about non-functional, like how many times, like what happens if 600 users log into my website? Stuff like that. You have to write that down and think, right, 600 people log into my website to buy tickets for Taylor Swift. Stuart's a big Taylor Swift fan, aren't you, Stuart? So 6,000 people log in to try and buy tickets for a gig all at once, and your system has to handle that. But write your charter saying, I expect the website to get slower, but can it be tolerated? The speeds that we'd be going at, things like that. So exploratory testing can be structured, but it has to be thought about. But it also gives the freedom for the tester to go and discover opportunities, as they call it in exploratory testing.
Okay, Brian. Thanks for sharing about insights on exploratory and acceptance testing. Coming to our seventh question: how to do exploratory testing for APIs or backend services? Mostly we experience in the front end, but how we can do exploratory testing for backend API testing? Could you please share about your experience on this?
Yes. API. You can apply exactly the same rules to exploratory testing to any layer of testing. I think they're doing that triangle of layer testing, isn't it? You've got your unit tests, your service layer tests, and then you've got your UI or whatever the front. And in all of these layers, you can do exploratory testing as much as you like. I don't see why you can't have it. There's a good diagram somewhere, and I forget the guy's name, Marx. Anyway, he does a great testing of the DevOps thing. He's got, we should be testing here, all over the place. And so and that's what you should be doing. So yes, you can. And I've actually done a little bit of API testing, where you can, you put stuff in the fields that are wrong. Like the API is expecting certain things so it can fulfill its call. So you put in stuff that's wrong, and you should be then saying, right, I should get a message X back from the server saying, hang on a minute, I'm expecting an alpha character here. You're putting numeric characters in, like the 30102s and 30, whatever the API is saying. So yeah, you can do that. And I would actually say that it's more important that you do the testing at that level, at that layer, than when you the front end almost.
Okay, Brian. So as you mentioned, like it should be covered in all the phases of the testing, not only in the initial front end, but in all the DevOps, all the stages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for the information. And we have a question here from Suraj Narayan. When one should stop exploratory testing?
Well, as I think my own experiences of it is that you actually do have a start in your test charter. You should have. Is it going to be? You have a test session where you're going to say, right, I'm going to spend that, depending on whatever you're testing, you say, right, it's a pretty big change. This is a pretty big implementation of a new feature. So you'll go, right, okay, I'm going to spend at least 3 hours doing exploratory testing, but I'm going to break that down into 3 different sessions. So I'm going to have 1 hour doing testing whatever this bit is. I'm going to have 1 hour doing that bit and that bit. So but you make sure that you have a beginning and end, and so you can have and when you finish all your blocks of testing, you're finished. So you do have to plan it out.
Okay.
And by the time, and then you have a discussion with the developer about what you found or not found, and then that will provide information into the next session until you found all the niggly things that really annoy you in your software.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so I hope Brian answered the question. Let's go to the next question. Okay, coming to the 8th question: how to do test data migration from, while doing test data migration from one set of tables to another set of tables? What checks or testing scope we need to consider?
I've only done a couple of I've only done one migration thing, and it wasn't very successful, I have to say. I think when you're migrating data into different databases, you just have to make sure that it's exactly you have to do a before after test, the before and the after, and make sure that there's a lot of great database get a tool. There's a lot of great database comparison tools that can do a lot of your heavy lifting for you. Don't ask me to name them all, but there's tools is my solution to that. Is get a good tool, or get your automation engineer to write you a framework that will allow you to compare your databases and make sure the migration goes successful. Tools.
Right. But can we totally depend on the tools for the data migration, or manually also we can verify?
Yeah, I don't. Yes, you could. You would definitely have. You still need the manual intervention, but I would say, yeah, you could rely upon your tools to do almost the majority of it.
Okay. Agree. Yeah, end of the day, we need tools help to achieve the testing successfully. Okay, let's go to the 9th question. How to do collaborative mind mapping, or how to implement in Agile, or while doing exploratory testing?
Well, collaborations, that's the key, and mind mapping and collaboration it's a very it's lean, isn't it? The lean method of lean and agile kind of bumping together. But mind mapping is throwing ideas, especially throwing ideas up at the wall and then making sure they all join together. And that requires everyone to be in the room or in a virtual environment like this. And it has to be done. It can be done at all stages of the development process, as I'm concerned. It should be done at all times. It shouldn't just be done at one point or this point and this point. It could be baked into what you're doing at every point. I'm a big fan of it. A big fan of collaboration. A big fan of. Some of the best stuff that we did was working in the Agile team I did was the fact that we were always collaborating every minute of the day almost. I used to sit next to my devs and we used to argue and debate about what we were doing and come up with different solutions almost constantly. You're always doing that. Go into a room and grab somebody and go in and sort things out because you're constantly coming up with challenges.
Good to hear that. Yes, as you mentioned, like mind maps is like throwing all the ideas on the chart.
And there's no such thing as bad ideas. So, that's the other thing. And getting people to try and do it is quite, and I can understand why people get intimidated about it, because even I get intimidated a lot by techie people, by people who are incredibly technical. And the way to stop getting people intimidated by that is to say, don't be technical. Try and explain that in plain language, what you're trying to do. Quite often techie people will just throw up acronyms and sort of, and that scares the devil out of other people. So make it plain language as well. It's fundamental to me.
Right, agree with you.
Yeah.
Just a second. So we have completed the second part, and is it okay to carry on with the coffee 3 session?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Brian, for your time. And the 10th question is, what is difference between Agile and safe Agile?
Well, someone's got to explain to me what safe Agile is. I've never heard of it. What's that?
Yes, I mean, these days, like even I had like many companies using safe Agile.
I've never heard of it. So I can't answer that.
Okay, okay, Brian. So let's go to the next one. Yes, Suraj already asked when to stop exploratory testing. So you have already answered for that question. So we'll go to the 12th question. In exploratory testing, how to track test status or test metrics?
I always find this tricky, but again, you should have the test charters stored somewhere. I mean, depending on what test management tool you're using, or good, well-written test charters will show if someone wants to come along and say, what did Brian test in this? And I will be able to show them my test charters, which will have detailed reports of what I'm testing. What, I tested this, I found this, we raised this bug. The developer and the product analyst thought this was not a bug, it's actually an enhancement, would you believe? And we're going to raise that as a feature enhancement, stuff like that. So yeah. Also, you can have, and exploratory testing relies a lot upon also doing video. You can capture your screen with recordings. There's lots of different tools out there that can allow a tester to capture their screens and feed that back to the developer and show anyone who's interested in what they were testing their evidence of what they were doing. So test chart is really, a good test chart is a good measure of the testing.
Okay, Brian, I agree with you. We'll note down test chart. And yes, the 13th question. I have gone through your profile from LinkedIn and online. You have mentioned rapid application. Could you please share about what is the rapid application mean?
I've only done it once. It was, it's a very, it's what it really says on the tin. And the developer and the tester and the product analyst are basically working into building out a functionality, really, and it's really done almost sitting side by side. For me, this is our method of what we did it this way, was the dev would build it out, and I would pretty much test it there and then. And then it's a very tight loop. That's how and it's rapid, it's very quick. You're basically not necessarily releasing things to a live environment or anything like that, but you're building your development process. It's a smaller loop, it's a smaller thing, because the dev would do something and I would go right, click, click, click. No, that's not working. Oh, right, I'll do it, fix it. So you're doing this, it's really quite a quick test build, test, build, whatever, and that's my experience of it. I mean, it might be a different definition for somebody else, though.
Okay, Brian.
It doesn't suit all teams either.
Right, depends on the team and company process as well.
Then, we had to get something built pretty quickly when we did it. So we were fixing something, and so we did this really quick test and build process, and we did get it out into production pretty quickly.
Agree with you. And the 14th question is about team velocity. For example, in a team with more developers, for example, 7 developers and only 1 QA, then how do we do the test approach and exploratory testing and the test documentation? How to achieve all the tasks while doing the team velocity?
People are obsessed with velocity, I was the only QA in a team of about 5 devs. I think it was 5 devs. I think I had, and so QA was often seen as a block because we've got all this work coming at you sometimes. But a lot of the times, I was twiddling my thumbs while the devs didn't do anything. We're too busy building stuff, and then it wasn't me. It was the block. It was the devs. So I think as a tester, you should, if you're doing sprints, you have to be very, very strict, and say no a lot. Get used to saying no. I'm not accepting this because I've got all of that to test, and you want me to, and so the work will pile up. And you got to think about. Try and get the devs to release work quicker to you. And that's something you have to go maybe talk to the devs about, is how for them to work better. The devs to build and release their work to the test. And I would even suggest that your person there mentioned that there was 7 devs and 1 QA. Why not get the devs to do some testing? So,
right.
Don't just see you as a tester. See everyone in that team as a tester, and say, right, okay, we've got 7 devs. So why can't 2 of the devs do some testing? They're not going to be coding all the time, so they can actually come and help the tester. The tester will guide them and say, right, I want you to look in this area and do this and do this. But so now, I would get away from saying the devs just do dev and testers just do testing. I know in some teams, in one of my previous companies, you actually had a tester fixing code, which I wasn't very sure about at the time. But so yeah, as a team, you would as a tester, you're there to also be a mentor and encourage the rest of your team to be testing as well. So. If you want your team velocity to go up, then you should get the devs to do some testing as well. They might not like it, but then you have to convince them. You are the champion of testing in the company, so you should be telling them the benefits of doing it, not just it'll benefit their work. Sell it to them that way. You'll improve as a developer. Developers like hearing that. Oh, I'll improve, right?
Right, Brian. Yes, that's right. I agree with you. Thanks, Brian, for answering all the 14 questions, and we have come up with the end of coffee 4. Now, coming to the next round, which is a rapid fire round, where we have instant questions. We will ask you can share your thoughts and experience on it. Okay, here comes the first question. The comprehensive documentation or exploratory testing? Which one you prefer, and what is the best practice in Agile?
You need comprehensive documentation to explore.
Oh, okay. So we need to follow both?
you need good documentation, and you need a tester and your developer and everyone in the team to discuss that documentation as well. You know, you need so many documents are just written and they're not actually discussed and thought out. And you sometimes just get people writing documentation and throwing it over at someone. And I've got experience of in working in big financial institutions where five different people were involved in writing 5 different documents about the same feature. Can you imagine what that's like, trying to figure out, because they're all speaking in different languages almost, and it can, so get consistency, get your testers and developers right at the start talking about the documentation. It makes exploratory testing a lot easier, and when you get to it.
Okay, Brian, agree with you. Thanks for sharing the thoughts. And coming to the second question, which is a manual or automation testing? Which one you prefer, and what is the best practice you should follow?
It's not all; it's both. Right. Obviously. Yeah. I don't either or. No. It's both. You have to have both. You have to have both. Sorry, I'm being. I'm not.
Okay, Brian, I agree with you. And coming to the third question, MOT or TechWell have Test Automation University or QA TechTalks. We know QA TechTalks is a startup and we are a growing community, but we would like to know your opinion about all these communities.
Oh, I've got to be careful what I say here in case I offend people. I like going to talks. I mean, I love things like this, and I love listening to people who, Eurostar. I go to a lot of Eurostar talks if I can. There's a lot of free ones coming up pretty soon. Ministry of Test, I am very active on that, as people may know. This is how we met, wasn't it, Vinyak? You know, we
yes, agree.
We had a coffee morning, like a very informal one, right? And we chatted a lot about things. So I'm also very active on Ministry of Test Slack. If you go into that, you can see me and other testers arguing and laughing and crying, usually crying. So, the Test Automation Uni is very good as well. If you're a complete newbie and you have no experience of automation or whatever, go there and just look at the videos. It's all free, I think, most of it, and the resource is fantastic. It gives you a very good grounding in that. So, yeah. Right. All communities are good. Yes, everything is for finally community purpose. Be involved. Everyone get involved in it. Yes, you are true. That's correct. Yes, I mean, all the communities are doing for the to reach the speaker's audience, and yes, it's everything like community service. So let's come to the fourth question. Agile or waterfall or V model or any other? Which one you prefer, and what is the best approach and best methodology in the current trend? I think it depends on it. Really depends on your company. I prefer Agile. I prefer working in that more collaborative, as soon as possible, get everyone involved early as possible in the development process. That's my preferred way of working. Waterfall, it delivers software, but it's riddled. It can go horribly wrong, and there's a lot of replanning and it's very rigid. But that's handy for some companies. So, but I'm much more of an Agile person. I've done V as well, and that too is very rigid. But yeah, Agile is much more my game. I'm not working in that world at the moment. I'm working in the waterfall V world. Oh, okay. Okay, Brian. And fifth question is, do you prefer 9 to 6 work or remote or as a freelancer? 9 to 6. Um, well, no, for the last year, I've been stuck in my room, basically. And I recently joined a company remotely, and I've not met any of my team members physically. All I've met them through this medium. And this week, actually, I was missing being in an office and really, really missed it. I think I hit a wall the last couple of weeks where I really, really, really wanted to be in an office talking through things, not just at a work level, but also at a personal level, because I was struggling a bit with having to deal with changing a little bit the way I was working. I was working on a different thing that I'd never worked on before, so I was struggling a little bit with moving. And I could have done with actually being in a room with somebody talking about it. But I think going forward, the modern world is going to be a much more blended way of working. I think you're going to get companies that will allow people to be working remotely. And you're going to have smaller offices, I think, because of that. But I don't think we should ever take away going into office and being able to go into a room and whiteboarding out a problem, a challenge that you're having, and going, right, I need to, why is this not working? You know, what are we doing wrong? And you can usually hash out the solution pretty quickly. So I miss that. I miss being in a team that I can tap on the shoulder to the dev and go, why is this not doing this? Show me what you're doing in your unit tests or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yes, after COVID, everything was, the whole working lifestyle was changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the final question, as I know, we are very familiar that you are more into Python.
Mm-hmm.
Just for to confirm, Java, JavaScript, or Python, and why Python?
If you're going to learn a language, you know, as people say, you know, and you get these people who tell you, oh, this is the best language because of this, because of that. If you're a newbie, and I am a newbie, I'm still, I think my programming language is about 2.5 years old. I think if you're going to, is to pick a language that you can read and understand the best. And I tried C# for a while, and it wasn't going in. And then I looked at Python because I read somewhere about the fact that all the big software houses, all the big Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all use Python because they're huge, big data-driven companies. As you know, they're harvesting our data at a ferocious rate, and they use Python. And you know, was it the guy who owned Twitter said Python where we can and see if we have to. You know, that was his phrase, wasn't it? Python where we can and see where we have to. So that, to me, I think Python, because we are going more towards, it's more manipulating data, and Python's really good at doing that. But JavaScript is good for when you're trying to learn automation and front-end automation as well, and JavaScript. All the big automation tools use JavaScript, don't they? There's a lot of them do. Like Selenium and all the rest of them. But if you want to get into data manipulation, I mean, I like data. I'm interested in data, so Python's not for me.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing your experiences and wonderful insights about coffee questions and rapid fire questions as well. It was a wonderful experience and talking to you. And once again, thanks for joining with us and sharing all the insights.
For inviting me, I mean, I really enjoyed it. My brain's hurting now. Actually, I'm trying to. I've learned some new words today as well. I've learned what's safe agile. I've never heard of that before. I'm going to have to go look that up.
And Stuart, do you have any questions for Brian? Stuart or Rahul?
Come on, Stuart.
Stuart says, great session. And thanks to you.
Sorry, could I just ask, see in terms of like testing tools you use for like recording defects? Obviously, you've been around quite a few companies now. Is there any testing tools like you think are better than others, or ways of doing things better than others? Or
Do you use tools at all, Stuart? Which tool do you use any at all?
well, I currently using Jira.
Jira.
Yeah.
I've never used Jira, but I think it's you can use whatever tool that you feel comfortable with. I mean, I've been using I use quality, as you know, we use Quality Center, and that became TFS, Team Foundation Server, which is now EDO, Agile DevOps. So yeah, it's whatever tool that suits your needs, and picking your tool is important, and it's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, but there's no one better than the other. I think they all muchness to me. Depends how, but don't just sit there and accept what the tool gives you. Build out the tool to suit for your needs as well. That's the thing. Be prepared to tailor it. Don't be afraid to tailor it and make it as easy as possible for your testers to use. Because there is a huge overhead of learning how to use that tool, and some people don't use their tools properly. But they just. I'm just going to use that bit of it, and they don't think about using it all. So there is a learning curve to them, which scares some people.
And just one more, would you track all your defects, or is there some defects you would go like straight to the developer, if you know what I mean, and just kind of skip out that?
That's a good. It's a good question, that actually. I'm sometimes you can. I have done that in the past where I've just gone to the dev and say, I found a problem, can we just fix it? And the dev did it because we had built up a good bit of trust, and we'd said, right, it's broken. Do you want to use a bug? No, and the dev knew me, and I knew him, and he said, no, I'm just going to fix it now, Brian, and I'll push the code to the test environment. Watch me. And he would just go push the code up, right, go and test it. And I would go and test it. And we'd raise a bug.
I would be inclined to agree, because like when you think about Agile, you're trying to communicate more. It's like it's all about communication. So yeah.
But I know a lot of people sort of try and what's the word? Measure the quality of their software by the number of bugs they've raised. And I'm moving away from that idea myself. I haven't quite articulated how I'd solve that problem, that discussion. But I'm inclined that if I find stuff, and the developer has capacity, remember, and trusts you, and you trust that developer, then there's no reason why you can't just sit, the pair programming, pair testing, they call it, where you're sitting basically, or you would do it here virtually. I've done it virtually with a guy in America once or twice, where I would be going through the system, and he would be recording my actions on the back end of the server. So he could see everything, all the transactions going on behind what I was doing, and he'd find a problem and he'd fix it there and then. So I've done that before, and you don't raise bugs because you're just fixing things as you're doing them, and it does go a lot quicker, because then you've got the whole admin thing of I've got to fill out the bug, and then you've got to send it to the dev, and the dev's got to fill out the bug with his fix, and then blah blah blah. So the dev can do all that when he's doing his push his code up. He can put a comment in the pull request of whatever Brian found this and we fixed it. So if they do need to track what's been fixed and what's not, it should be within the push and the pull requests of the software.
That's great, thanks.
Okay, Brian. Sorry, we have a question from LinkedIn from Ingrid. I have posted in the chat box. Could you please check it?
Okay.
I currently have an analysis project in its early stage and may have a couple more in the near future. These could include vendor product analysis and new database implementation. The outcome could be determining feasibility of concepts as opposed to resulting with a MVP product as a deliverable. My QA approach is to focus on exploratory type testing, even though there might not be any opportunities to execute test scenarios. I want possible test scenarios to be captured for UI components, database, and environment setup. What advice do you have for me as to my approach? How can I make this exploratory testing the best, and any pitfalls to watch for?
Right, it's a very long.
Yeah.
Right. I hate advice. Don't be afraid. A lot of people get worried about breaking their testing down. Don't be afraid to break your tests down into tiny, smallest things possible. Don't be afraid to do that. And you would definitely break out you've got a back end going on there and the front end, and don't think you should be alone on that as well. If you're the only QA there, then again, as I said before, you should be trying to get your devs to do as much testing as possible as well. I would also start with your devs by asking them what's their approach to the unit testing as well. And now you might not need to read the code or anything like that, but at least be able to sort of sit down and see the unit test results and say, right, how many are passing, how many are failing, and try and get a standard to say, right, I expect all your unit tests to pass, and maybe even set a coverage for them. Don't make it 100% because I think that's not the place to start. You should maybe say, oh, try and get 60%. 40%, maybe you can start at 40% coverage for unit tests and things like that. Well, they might already have a coverage. Ask them what the coverage is, and ask them if they can improve it, if they can improve it. And exploratory testing, again, as I'm banging on about it, you should write a test coverage. Write your test charters as small as possible to begin with. You can go down a rabbit hole with exploratory testing, but writing it and taking notes is a skill that you have to learn when you're doing note taking. When you're doing exploratory testing, is something I struggle with. It's actually it's a skill that you have to learn about writing notes as you're going along. Well, I see this, I see that, and I see this, and what does that mean? Because exploratory testing is about discovery, and that's you have to have an open mind about your software discovery. You're learning. You're telling a story of the software as well to the rest of your team. This is what's happening in my software. So.
Okay, Brian. With that, we have come up to the end of the session, and thanks for Stuart for joining the session, Rahul and Suraj. And the recorded session will be uploaded to the QA TechTalks channel soon by next week. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel for notifications. And once again, thanks, Brian, for your wonderful time and sharing your insights and thoughts, ideas. It was a great session.
Oh no, thanks for inviting me again. And I'm looking forward to other ones. I'll come along and
sure, definitely
and heckle.